Meet the transfers, Memphis Tigers edition. Memphis slots in at 15th on our best transfer class rankings in the entire country. Let's start at the top with that. Brian, does that feel about right to you?
I think it does. There is part of me that wonders if this class is being a little bit underrated, given the fact that we have seen Penny Hardaway and Memphis land high profile transfers quite often throughout his tenure. Many often more high profile than who they've brought in this year, and it not like work out as gloriously as we think it does in the offseason all the time. Like it feels like there is some just fatigue around Memphis off seasons. That the buzz that maybe this class would have generated 2 years ago isn't there because we've seen it before and we haven't seen it work to the potential that everybody thought it would in past off seasons. So I like some of the pieces that Memphis brought in. Certainly, I think maybe they're being slept on a little bit because of some of that fatigue. But I also understand why that fatigue is there. But I think there are some really good pieces here.
I think it's fatigue and I think it's skepticism. Like I think Penny
Yeah,
could do anything right now, and I think people would look at it a little bit sideways of like, well, the other big splashes he's made haven't worked. Like we've been
exactly.
through this. He had superstars. So it's kind of a show me, a prove it time for Penny Hardaway. I will say I am one of those skeptics. So the way we did this for compiling our rankings of all of the best transfer classes in the country, we each individually ranked them and then we composited them basically and figured out what the average was. I had Memphis 29th. This is the lowest that I ranked any team that we are actually doing a video for. You had Memphis 10th overall. Carter had Memphis 9th overall. So you guys are like significantly higher on Memphis than I am. You both have them higher than they even landed on our list. So we'll see. Hopefully you can convince me of this team by the end of this video. There's certainly a lot of new names. They have
Yep.
8 incoming transfers. We will go player by player and give a role projection, give our in-depth thoughts on each guy. But a couple questions for you at the top of this. First off, did Penny Hardaway do what he set out to do with this transfer class this offseason?
I mean, what did he set out to do? I think that's another question because you brought in 8 guys, and it often feels like Penny's kind of just spraying the board and bringing in the high profile guys and talented guys he can and figuring it out from there. There was an emphasis on getting bigs. I think he did that. He got a lead guard in Tyrese Hunter. You can question how good of a lead guard he is, particularly in comparison to some of the other lead guards that Memphis has had. And then he filled out his roster, right? You got 8 guys. There's going to be some filler in there. Um, so I think like yes, but with a question mark on that.
It's a yes if you take the literal definition of like what was he trying to do? Well, he had to bring in a full new roster. Like they,
Right.
they are returning Nick Jourdain and 2 incoming freshmen. So that's 6.5 points a game. You got to replenish 70 points a game.
Yeah.
And in a literal definition, he did that. He brought in 8 guys. My questions and why I would maybe answer like, no, he probably didn't do what he was trying to do. There's one high major starter here. He brought in 8 guys. One of them was a high major starter last year. Everybody else like was either really good at a lower level or very unproven at the high major level. Like Dane Danger's a fun player. He couldn't crack the rotation on a good Illinois team. Musa Cisse's okay. Like
Right.
I don't know how that translates, and it's probably good enough for most nights in the American, but I don't know if it's good enough to elevate Memphis, and that's part of why I'm skeptical of this team. What is one thing they could have done differently with this class that would have improved it and made you like it a little bit more?
I think a little bit more shooting, particularly in like the 3 and 4 spots. Shooting has never really been a strong suit of a Memphis team under Penny Hardaway. Defense has been, and this class is another one that really focuses on the defensive end. I think they're going to be awesome defensively. At least the potential is there for them to be awesome. I have questions like, are you going to play Dane Danger and Musa Cisse together? Are you going to play them both 20 minutes a game? Like I thought that was interesting to go get both of them, not use those resources in other places to try and get some more shooting or things like that. But they're both good players. And I think there are 2 conversations about the players themselves and the class themselves, and then how you expect Penny to utilize it and look on the court. Right.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
he amassed talent. Like this is a talented group, but I think it's fair to question how they are going to actually look on the court. And there are some things he could have done. I think again the redundant play styles of the bigs, adding some more shooting, adding some more just dynamicism on the wings would have been beneficial. I think, and made me like this class even more in terms of how it projects on the court.
Yeah, great defensively doesn't go with Dane Danger, so we got to figure out what his role is and where that goes. But I my answer's a little different. I would have said there's a hole positionally on this roster, and I think it's at the center spot. And again, I know they have Dane Danger and they have Musa Cisse; those are centers. I think they have a hole at the center spot. That speaks to what I'm trying to imply here. I mean, they've got three guys who scored in double figures last year. We'll speak to those three. I think they're awesome. They're all guards. Like you're going to have
Yeah.
a three-headed guard monster that's fantastic on this team. And then everything else is completely unproven at any level. And that would scare me. Like I would have rather than bring five guys, four of whom project to come off the bench in role spots. I would have rather found a way to get a starter level center, a really good one. And I'm a little bummed they didn't because I think if they had one, the guards are good enough for me to really be in on this team. But the forward and the wing spots, as you mentioned, are question marks. Okay, we'll go player by player here. I'm going to try and work up the list. So we'll go in reverse order of points per game from last season. The lowest man on the totem pole is Musa Cisse. He comes in from Ole Miss. He averaged 4-4 last season. He's the only true 7-footer on this team. As we go player by player, you can try and define a role, either a star, a starter, a role player, or a non-factor. What do you anticipate Musa Cisse will be, and just what do you think of his game in general?
I anticipate him being a role player. I think there's a chance he's a non-factor. Um,
Ooh.
but his rim protection, I think, is going to be crucial to what Memphis wants to do. Like I think if you're going to pair him and Dane Danger, you're looking for 20 minutes of Dane Danger's offense and 20 minutes of Musa Cisse's rim protection. And that's essentially what it boils down to. And so for Musa Cisse, I think the ship is well gone of him potentially turning into something more than just a um, rotational defensive big in college. Him developing anything more than that, I think, has passed a while ago. But for a Memphis team that likes to be aggressive on the perimeter, gamble for steals, pressure, having a rim protector like him in the back is beneficial. I don't know if he's going to start. I don't know if he's going to play major minutes, but I think there's a role for him as that rim protector in the back of that.
Yeah, I think he's a role player too. You don't bring him back to Memphis. Remember, he started his career at
Right.
Memphis under Penny. If you don't anticipate him playing some sort of role, and he's the only 7-footer on the team, he's the only true rim protector on the team. That alone is going to make him valuable. I just couldn't be more out on who Cisse is as a player. No disrespect, but this is a man who shot 26% from the free throw line last year, 10 for
It's not
38.
good. It's not
Uh,
good.
Brian, he has started 91 games in his career in 4 seasons. I don't know that there's a player in college basketball history that has started 91 games and done less. Now that's harsh, but like he's played for three different programs. He's done the revolving door, and every program's like, yeah, we can move on after a year.
Yeah.
And now right back into Penny Hardaway's hands. Okay, what could go wrong? I don't think this is good. I don't think if Memphis is good, he'll play much, but he is a legitimate defensive weapon, and I think that will matter when your front court counterpart is Dane Danger. So for that reason, he's a role player. Next up is Dane Danger, 6.1 points a game at Illinois in 10 minutes a game. That's the key number because anytime Dane played significant minutes, he was seriously productive. My co-host Carter will tell you he thinks he's the best offensive big man in the country. It's his favorite player in the sport. I think there's some truth to that and certainly some hyperbole. What do you expect from Dane Danger this year?
I'm expecting him to be a starter. I think he'll probably start at the five. How many minutes he plays, I think we'll see. He might be one of those starters who averages like 20 to 25 minutes per game. Maybe, less if he gets into foul trouble. He's not going to be somebody who is your workhorse, I don't think. But he is somebody who, with his offense, can be very productive and vital for a team that, as you mentioned, needs the big body inside. Now, we haven't seen Memphis like really thrive with a interior post scorer. James Wiseman was supposed to be that, and we got 3 games of James Wiseman before he he left. So we don't really know how that looks in Memphis offense. You mentioned how good the guards can be. I think a defensive big probably goes better with that, but you can't deny that Danger's talented and is one of the more skilled offensive bigs in the country. I'm not going to say he's the best. I'm not Carter Elliott, but I do think that skill set is undeniable. How they use that, I want to see, but I don't think you go get him as early as they did without thinking he's going to play a big role for you.
There's a world here where Dane is insanely statistically productive this year.
Yeah.
And I think this is a perfect team fit for Dane. Like if I was Dane Danger's advisor, I would love this fit because you're looking around and you're like, oh, you're clearly the most talented big here. Go play
Yeah.
30 minutes. This is all we've ever wanted is 30 minutes of Dane Dange and see what happens. Now, I have very real concerns about what does that mean for your basketball team if Dane's playing 30 plus minutes because his offense is legitimately that special. And the fact that no coach has settled in on that being valuable in a big minute role means something about what he is defensively. He's a black hole. He's a non-defender. He has not shown the ability to stay on the court, whether due to fouls, whether due to stamina, whether due to just defensive aptitude in his career. I think almost by default, he's going to play a ton for Memphis, but I think they're going to have pretty serious defensive concerns if that's the case.
Yeah.
But it should mean some pretty special offensive numbers if he plays 25 minutes a game for the first time in his career. So he is a starter, and I think he can be a good one. And there is a non-zero chance where there's some really great individual numbers. Next on the list is Baraka Okaji. I don't know if I'm saying that last name correctly, but he's from George Mason. Sophomore, played 24 minutes a game last season. 25% from three is the one I would circle, but productive. 8, 2, and 2 in 24 minutes in his first year. What do you expect from him?
I think he's a role player. I think he's a depth guard. The lack of shooting, I think, is going to keep him from playing a major role, as you mentioned, but athletic, can do a number of different things. Like he is somebody who comes in, gives you, I think, probably 15 minutes a night off the bench, gives his guards a break, is not a liability by any means on the court. But I don't see a world, particularly with this roster, where he's necessarily counted on to be much more than that.
I like the fit of him and Penny because I think he could be a really good impact defender down the line. Like he was a pretty high steals guy as a freshman in the A10, and the A10's no joke, man. Like that's a good league to kind of poach from if you're Memphis. I like in general when coaches gamble on freshmen who have theoretically 3 years left, and this feels like a guy who could grow and get a lot better over time. But for this year, I definitely think he's a role player. And I think he's good enough to avoid being a non-factor in year one and earn some real minutes as like the defensive pest off the bench guard behind the trio that we're going to talk about in a little bit. Next on the list is Tyreek Smith from SMU. He's going into his 5th year. Last season, 8 points, 5 rebounds a game, 58% from the floor. Certainly, we should probably throw him in the big man conversation here with the other two that we already discussed, but for me, he's 3rd on the pecking order, and he might need to play next to a true center. What do you think for Smith?
That's why I kept him out of the conversation, because I think he is probably going to play next to. There are scenarios where he can play the 5 and slide down, but I think the more likely scenario is that he plays the 4. He, I think, is the interesting piece that is going to be moved around a lot depending on your opponent and what Hardaway likes to do or decides he wants to do with this team. Because he can play big. You're going to play him next to one of the bigs. If you don't like what else you have at the 3 and the 4, because of that, I'm going to say role player for him because there is certainly a role in the rotation and it's probably a bigger role. I don't know if he's like penciled in as a starter though. If he's penciled in, it's not in pen.
Yeah. I guess he's a role player. Like at least a couple of these guys we're saying role players for are going to be non-factors in my opinion. But like,
I don't know. They need all of these guys to do something.
Yeah, it's hard to make a case like that any of them can't beat out the other ones in the front court and on the wings. Like I think Nick Jourdain is better than Tyreek Smith? I don't know. I think they've both been bad. And this is why I'm so low on this class. You're really going to have to sell me on these guards, but it's like Tyreek Smith is another dude. He's played for 3 different programs before even getting to Memphis, and
Mhm.
he's been a non-impact player for all of them. So, like at a certain point, aren't you just taking lottery tickets on guys that nobody wants over and over again here? Look, he can protect the rim. He was a good block guy last season. I don't love playing him at the 4 because he's a total non-shooter, but I don't know. Like if Dane just so much of a defensive liability, there's a world where you could go to Tyreek Smith and Cisse together, and then I think that's a really special defensive lineup. So I'll say role player, but as a fan, I wouldn't be rooting to see him playing the 4 on my team. I don't think that's good for Memphis, but it might happen. Next on the list, PJ Carter from Texas San Antonio. Last season, 9 points a game. Hey, a good shooter, 40% from 3 last year, 42% from the floor overall. What do you expect from PJ Carter?
A role player because of his shooting, and that shooting may throw him in the starting lineup at some points, particularly if Memphis opts to go small. They need that. They absolutely need that. Um, that's going to be his role, though.
It is. And I think he can fill it if he shoots the way he did at Texas San Antonio. Like I'm in. Little scary that okay, so he played 2 years at Campbell, played very sparingly, then a year off. Then last season at UTSA, he explodes and has a great shooting year. Before that, he was 2 for 9 from 3. I know it's a super small sample size, but like he doesn't exactly have a track record of being a proven shooter other than last season. No?
He does not, but I will say that UTSA played. We'll see what happens this season with UTSA with Austin Collins taking over there. Is a very wide open up and down, just go down and shoot 7 seconds or less kind of offense, and is those shots from 3.
Yeah.
And so the fact that he took them made them at a 46% clip, I think is encouraging, particularly because Memphis wants to get up and down as
Yeah.
well. Like I think there's some proof of concept of him being a good shooter in a similar system.
Yeah, does seem like a good system fit. What I would say is this: I think the starting guards are all so good, barring health concerns. I think only one of Baraka and PJ Carter is going to play. So, what's more valuable, Baraka's defense or PJ's shooting? I think on paper it's probably PJ's shooting. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll say he's a role player, but I would keep an eye on that. I don't think this team's going to like play 5 guards serious minutes, and that means that
Oh,
needs to.
that wouldn't surprise me at all because I don't know if there is that guy who you can play 35 minutes, and with the way that Penny prefers to play defense, you're going to rotate guys in and out of there.
You're not wrong. I just think the 3 at the top are so much better than all these other guys. And
I mean,
if he's
that's
really
that's true.
yeah, if he's keeping those 3 under 30 minutes for any reason, I couldn't be more out on it. Like to me, they need Hunter, Haggerty, and Rogers, who we're about to talk one by one here, to each play like 32 minutes. And if that happens, you can talk me into okay, that's a 3-headed monster. They're really good. But if not, like something's gone wrong. And for the record, those guys can play a bunch of like Hunter was 32 at Texas, Haggerty was 34 at Tulsa, Rogers was 35 at Wichita State. So I think they're durable, but we'll
If
see.
you play them all 32, though, that's still 24 minutes that you're
You're right.
looking at with other guys. And so you throw 15 at Carter, 9, quick math there, 9 at Okoji. And like
Yeah.
you have some rotation there to keep guys fresh.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Okay. Up the list. Tyrese Hunter is next based on our points per game ladder. 11 points a game last season, 4 assists. Tyrese Hunter started his career at Iowa State, had a very promising freshman season, moves to Texas, where I think he left a lot to be desired. Like he kept kind of being listed by people like us and pundits as breakout candidate, and it just never fully came together. I'm still a big fan of his game. What do you make of his projection this season? I'm nervous. That's where I'm headed with this.
Yeah, I think he's a starter, certainly. I think they may need him to be a star, and I don't think that's in there. He is a really, really good defensive guard. He's going to fit this style of play perfectly. He's not a great shooter, but excels attacking the basket, excels on the defensive end. Like that's the Penny Hardaway Memphis ideal guard. That's the candidate that succeeds in the system, and I think he is set up to have success. The Iowa State deal I don't know just how much offense he was really allowed to do. He had some flashes. He had the one NCAA tournament game where he scored like 20 something points, and that kind of set the table. Transfers to Texas to be that lead guard, essentially, to have more of the ball handling duties. And then I think not long after that, Marcus Carr ends up going to Texas, and that put him back. It was strange then not see him be that guy once Marcus Carr left. I know they brought in Max Asmus, but the progression from Tyrese Hunter never came. It was very stagnant. And so I'm not expecting that jump to come now. But if you get his skill set in Penny Hardaway's system, he's somebody who can average, 12 to 15, 4 and 4 with 2 steals and give you 30 plus minutes a night, which for this roster gives you a solid, legitimate starting building block.
So I'm going to say he's a star, and I'm terrified of myself saying that because I've said this 3 consecutive years running. Like I fall for it every single season. I get duped. I'm Charlie Brown, and Lucy pulls the football away over and over again. Um, I believe. I don't know why. I believe in the player. Like I'm boiling it down to be so simple, but like I watched this dude play basketball, and I'm like, yes, he's tough-minded. He's physical. He's a great defensive leader. And I think there's untapped offensive stuff because I don't think he's ever been in the right situation. And maybe that's me making excuses for a guy I believe in. But like to me, Iowa State year one, he was just way ahead of schedule, and nobody in Iowa State planned on him being like an offensive engine superstar. He goes to Texas. He thinks he's going to be the face. Marcus Carr comes in and ruins that. Then the next year, Max Asmus is still there and he's good, but like it never was the perfect fit because all these dudes need the ball and Tyrese Hunter doesn't know where he's supposed to land and he's not as good offensively as the guys we just named. So I'm happy that I think he's landing in a spot where I believe strongly he's the best player. And I know that there's 2 guys who had better production offensively last year at lower levels that we're about to talk about. But to me, Tyrese Hunter is the best player on this team. And I think that's the first time he can say that since Iowa State, when coincidentally he looked the best he's looked in his career back in year one. And I'm hoping that this fuels him. I think he's the second best guard that Penny Hardaway's had behind Kendrick Davis. And I think there's a world where this works. What scares me is I think Haggerty and Rogers need the ball too. And I think they're small. They're offense-minded guys. It feels a little like, is this Texas all over again, but with worse players than Max Asmus? That's my fear. I'm going to give enough credit to Penny that I think he figures it out. Maybe Tyrese Hunter just figures it out. Maybe it just clicks. But I'm so afraid that I believe he's going to be a star again because it's probably going to do me like it did the last 2 years.
The talent is there, and it's in the cards. What concerns me is that we didn't see the on-court progression from production standpoint or a mental aspect of I'm taking over now.
Yeah. Yes.
And so you mentioned Haggerty and Rogers also needing the ball. I wonder if there's going to be still some of Hunter deferring to them when for Memphis to be the best version of themselves, that may not be the case.
I'm coming to a conclusion before we get to the end of this video, and I don't like the conclusion. Next on the list is Colby Rogers from Wichita State. 41% from three last season, 16 points a game. This was one of the very best shooters in the country last year. Super high volume, 7 attempts a game. Going back to his days at Siena, 3 full seasons ago now, he was a 6 3-point attempts a game guy, made him at a 43% clip. So this guy is a proven stone cold shooter. This is the great fit with Tyrese Hunter for me. He's a starter, and I think he's a prolific shooter on this team.
Yeah, it's perfect. Again, I don't know if the star potential is there. I don't know if he's going to average 16 points per game, but I do think he's a double figure scorer and somebody who could get, 12, 13, 14, make a couple threes a game. He's going to be the one they rely on to space the floor, him and Carter. But Rogers is going to be the one who spends, I think, the most time on the court. They're going to need that shooting. It wouldn't surprise me if he led the team in minutes because of that, to be quite honest, even though we just talked about Tyrese Hunter being the best, most talented player. But I think you put him in Penn as a starter.
Yep. Yeah, he has to be. Is there any world where he's a star on this team or no?
Yeah, I think so. If Hunter and Haggerty become more creators and Rogers is making 3 threes a game, which is not that outrageous considering the volume he typically takes and the volume Memphis may need him to take. Like he could average 15 to 18 and be the leading scorer or most productive player on a Memphis tournament team.
Yeah.
There's a scenario that plays out.
Now I'm being swung around because now I feel like this is like a diet version of Houston guard trios. It's like we got the tough point guard, we got the shooter at the 3, and then we got maybe the best player at the 2. That's PJ Haggerty. PJ Haggerty last season in the American Conference was a absolute superstar. 21 points a game, 49% from the floor. He didn't shoot well from 3, only 29%, but got to the line 10 times a game, 77% there, almost 4 assists, started 31 games, played 34 minutes a game. For Tulsa, he started his career at TCU where he didn't play. And then he gets to Tulsa and has a breakout season. All conference last season. Is that going to translate at Memphis next to these other guards? Like he's a starter clearly. Is he better than Tyrese Hunter? I don't know.
I think he's the one who ends up the star.
Okay.
Not because he's necessarily better than Tyrese Hunter, although I think you can have that debate. But what I talked about with Tyrese Hunter being more deferential, preferring to defer, and we haven't seen him really step up and be the lead guy. We've seen Haggerty do that, and we saw him do that last year in the American. So now, if you're Memphis and you need somebody to kind of take the reins, Haggerty has already shown a willingness to go take the reins somewhere. Tyrese Hunter has not. Tyrese Hunter may be like the point guard and Haggerty's a 2 guard on the roster, but I think Haggerty is going to be the guy who this runs through more often than not.
Okay. I can see that. I just don't know if I think that's good for Memphis. Like
That's
it
another
does.
debate. That's another question whether that's good for Memphis or not.
Yeah.
But I see it playing out that way.
I do question, like, is there enough ball to go around between Hunter and Haggerty? That's sort of the one fear I have. And it reminds me of Asmus and Hunter in the past and Marcus Carr and Hunter in the past. So I guess we'll see. But I think Colby Rogers can help both of them. And either way, it's one of the most firepower heavy backcourts in the entire country, and there's a lot of potential. Okay, there's your 8-man class. I just want to make a quick editor's note here on those 8 players. I added this up as we went. Those 8 players have played for 17 schools before transferring to Memphis. So there's an average of over 2 previous schools per transfer player that is coming into Memphis. All of these guys immediately leave everywhere they've been in the entire history of their college basketball careers. That has to mean something, Brian. Like, I'm not saying they're all toxic individuals, but like stop by stop, every single one of these guys has either sought to run away or not been welcomed back, or it just hasn't worked.
It's the NIL era, man. The era of unlimited transfers. There's always greener pastures, whether that's a bigger role, whether that is a bigger program. And then you get there and it's not what you think.
These guys have been seeking bigger roles since 5 years ago and never gotten one at any program, any coach. I'm terrified. I'm trying to say, I feel
you're the old man yelling out of clouds right now, the way that kids are today.
I feel stronger about me having them 28th and you guys having them a top 10 transfer class. And there are a lot of transfer classes I feel safer about than this class. Okay, some superlatives. Who's the best player from this class at the end of the season?
Haggerty.
I'm going Hunter.
Okay.
If it's Haggerty, I think that's good for Memphis, though. I will add that caveat. Who's the most improved from start to finish at the end of the season?
Dane Danger. I think he figures out how to play big minutes and be productive.
I'm going to go Baraka. Just younger guy here, one of the only super young guys. I think he will carve out a bigger role at the end of the season than he has at the beginning of it, likely because some of the guards in front of him maybe falter and have some issues. And then final question, give me a transfer hot take for this Memphis team.
I think we'll look back on it and we'll view this backcourt as being one of the better in the country, like you mentioned. That's going to follow the same script that feels like every Memphis season does, where it gets to late February and we're talking about them as a bubble team, but a dangerous one because if they get in the tournament, they have these guards that can be really good. And you know what wins in March is guard play. It's the same conversation we have with Memphis. Feels like every single season. I think we're bound for that again.
I think multiple players from this 8-man group step away from the team mid-season. That is my hot take prediction. This is the most volatile group that we've discussed in the 21 videos we've done.
Yes.
If you want to see the other 21 or the other 20, they're all coming out on the channel 3 per day, every day this week. Thank you for watching, and thank you, Brian Ralph, for being here. Car, you know what I love about you?
That I'm handsome?
You're reliable. I can count on you. You know, honestly, you remind me of Aaron Henry a little bit. Remember when, like, you know, their back was against the wall, nothing was going right, and man just showed up every day. He didn't make excuses. There were no problems. There were just solutions.
Sounds like me.
That's you. And it also reminds me of Duncan Mechanical Solutions, because if you're looking for quality furnace repair, look no further than the heating and air experts that you can trust. Comfort and quality are their standard. They're an HVAC company that serves Northeast Indiana and Southern Michigan, whether it's heating and air conditioning, plumbing, kitchen and bath remodeling, or emergency services when you need them most. Duncan Mechanical Solutions has reliable service that you can count on. Cart, remember when your basement almost exploded?
I remember when my basement almost exploded. I remember when my furnace itself was acting funny. I remember when my AC was acting funny. I wish I had Duncan in my back pocket. I wouldn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been anywhere in northern Indiana or southern Michigan that hasn't been perfectly cool or perfectly warm, depending on when the day called for. And that's because of Duncan Mechanical Solutions. They are the presenting sponsor for the month of July. Shout out to Duncan Mechanical Solutions. Go to duncanmechanicalsolutions.com to learn more.